welcome to Turn the Page, the official podcast of the Syosset Public Library.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Turn the Page. I'm your host today, Jen, and today I am joined by the author of a number of lovely fantasy romance novels, who is here to discuss the conclusion of an absolutely thrilling trilogy, and I am so excited. Welcome. Could I ask you to introduce yourself and your book, please?
Sure. I am Carissa Broadbent. I write magic and kissing books, as I like to call them. And I am very excited that we're going to be coming up, as of listening, the third book in my War of Lost Hearts series, Mother of Death and Dawn, is being re-released by my publisher, Bramble. So that's the conclusion of the War of Lost Hearts trilogy. And it's epic and it's intense, and you'll probably cry if I did my job well.
You did, because I did, so.
Oh, thank you. That's great. See, this is the only job where where people will say that, like, oh my God, because of you, I was weeping, like all night. And this is the only job where you say, thank you.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you.
Oh, that's so nice to hear. Yeah.
That's so sweet to hear.
Yeah.
The number of people that I had between Children of Fallen Gods, the second book in this trilogy, there's one particular scene, like one particular moment about 70% in. And I had like a number of people like sending me pictures like of themselves crying. And I was like, this is the only job where that is not weird, like.
So could you tell us a little bit about your journey as a writer and your other works, perhaps, leading up to this, the re-release of this trilogy?
Sure. So I was originally self-published. I started off in self-publishing. And even now, a lot of my books are hybrid published, meaning like I hold some of the rights, the publisher holds some of the rights. And it's been a great experience for me, honestly. Like, I'm very grateful that I got to build my career that way. And, I'm someone who always says never say never. But I do believe that there will always be some aspect of my career that is independent. I feel really strongly about that. So I started off in self-publishing. I wrote and published a few books that were really not good. They live on like Goodreads, because Goodreads is forever apparently, and like nothing ever goes away on there. And people will ask me about them and I'll be like, oh honey, no, you don't. Just pretend you don't want it. Trust me. And then in January of 2020, when I was standing on a cliff, not knowing, what was about to happen in 2020, early 2020, I published Daughter of No Worlds. And at that time, I actually tallied this up when we did the re-release last year. It was like it sold something like 40 copies, in like the first 30 days. Like not a lot, not a lot of people read it. Like there were many days, weeks when nobody picked up the book at all. And I was okay with that because I was kind of like a nobody at the time. But it's kind of incredible that the series, like very slowly and very organically, gained a readership to the point where when this book, Mother of Death and Dawn, was originally released independently, this would have been in probably 2022, 2023. I should have looked this up. I should know this, but all of the last 5 years, last 6 years have like blurred together. I don't know if you feel that way too. Like since COVID, it's like everything is just kind of 1 year.
It's time soup. Yes, since
it's time soup. That is a great way of putting it.
Yeah.
So somewhere in that time soup, Mother of Death and Dawn came out for the first time independently. And by that time, I was actually a full-time author. I was able to become a full-time author off of this series because it gained such a faithful readership, but like very slowly, very steadily. Like if you look at my like sales graph, it's like a very steady incline, like over the course of years. And I feel like I'm very grateful to have had that opportunity to build my career that way. And then I began my other series, the Crowns of Nyaxia series, with The Serpent and the Wings of Night, which is the one that is kind of the more viral, that's what most people know me for. And that had like a more, kind of book talk viral sort of trajectory, which was a very different experience. Also amazing. I'm very grateful that it happened. So now I get to write about vampires kissing and killing each other. And I get to write about like these epic stories. And I'm really grateful that the War of Lost Hearts series has now gotten this re-release because when I was writing it, I was like completely happy being a self-published author, recognizing my books will never be in bookstores. And that's okay. I'm okay with that trade-off. My books will never be on the New York Times list. And it's kind of incredible that now these books that were written that way have some of these opportunities.
That is so great. And it's really interesting, that part of this trajectory for you is to return to books and sort of get to reconsider them. So what was the inception for the series? Was it a character or was it like a little bit of world building? What was the seed from which the trilogy grew?
So a lot of my favorite books that I've written something like 12 books at this point, something like that. I've written a lot of them. And they come from a lot of different places, but a lot of my favorite books I've written come from like me struggling with a question that doesn't have an answer.
Mm.
So when I first wrote Daughter of No Worlds, I was really struggling with like the state of the world. This was like 2018, when I started writing it, like mid 2018. Plot twist, it got worse, so that's great. But I was really struggling with like the just state of the world and just feeling really demoralized by kind of the trajectory like a lot of things were taking in the world and really struggling with this idea that seemed it's prevalent now, but it seemed even more prevalent in like kind of just world discussion, like just the way people were talking about things that were happening. The question of like, okay, you're part of a corrupt system, right? Like everything is corrupt and bad. Um, is it quote unquote, big air quotes, better to be a part of that system for the purposes of trying to improve it? Or is it quote unquote better to remove yourself from it because it's too corrupt and you're too morally compromised, but then you kind of can't affect anything, right? Because you're opting out of everything and therefore you can't do anything. And I ended up with two characters that sort of embodied those extremes. Tasana and Max. Max being someone who was like, look, I did this, it was bad. I did bad things happened to me and people I love because of it. And now there is no moral action, therefore I will do nothing forever. And I would say that in his situation, it is an understandable position to take. Yeah. And then on the other hand, you have Tisana, who is someone who is very much willing to put herself and in service to really corrupt systems because she feels like, well, you got to play the game, like that's the only way to make things happen. And I would also argue that in her position, that is a very understandable position to take. Like I really like to struggle with these questions of like, there's no right or wrong answer, like, and I still don't have the answer to those questions. I'm still asking myself these. It's not like I solve it, by writing this series about magical people, unfortunately. So really the characters came to me first and I really connected with them. Like it was really a passion project of mine. And I feel like I'll never get to write a project like this again, where it was just completely written for me at the time.
Mm. I really love the dynamic between them, Tisana and is it Maxentarius or Maxentarius?
I pronounce it Maxentarius, but I also change it up like every time I say it. So I am not a stickler for pronunciation.
I love their dynamic because, obviously there is a romantic tension and dynamic between them that's very powerful, but there is this sort of like, as you were describing, like an ideological sort of tension between them too. And that's so driven by the types of trauma that they experienced and how that kind of shaped how they chose to survive after, if that kind of makes sense. So there's just so many different layers of conflict, like kind of mapped on each other that makes them a very potent combination.
Oh, thank you. That is very high praise because that's what I aim to do. That's the ideal.
I'd love to ask about your process of writing a trilogy of this one in particular. When you started, do you know where the epic saga will end, or do you find it along the way?
So this trilogy, I definitely found it along the way. I mean, there were things that I knew would happen like in the overall trajectory, but it was also I had written, like I mentioned, actually four books before this. One of them was never published at all. I just abandoned the series, but they weren't very good. And therefore, this was my first time kind of trying to land the plane, and it's a very epic trilogy. Like the scale gets very, very big. One of my biggest challenges when writing this book in particular, Mother of Death and Dawn, was that some characters had taken trajectories that I did not expect them to take. And some characters had reader reactions that I didn't necessarily expect. And it's a series in which virtually everyone is some degree of morally gray. And I enjoy exploring that. And I am not someone who thinks that all books need to be like moral parables, meaning like, oh, every good character has good things happen to them and every bad character has bad things happen to them. Sometimes bad people get good endings and sometimes good people get bad endings, and that's how the cookie crumbles. But at the same time, I was still trying to think of like a satisfying ending and kind of who is going to get to have some degree of redemption and who is not. And that was really hard. Like I definitely really struggled with that with this book in particular.
I think that's really interesting because it is about who gets redemption and also what are you willing to sacrifice for that redemption. There's a lot of almost philosophical and personal conflict about like what do you need to sacrifice in order to reach your goals. And I think like how that changes you as a person.
Yeah, and I still like struggle with that. I believe really strongly that it's very hard to be a good person. Like it's challenging. Like I feel like a lot of media sometimes can treat it as, well, the big hurdle is just deciding that you have to and being self-aware. I think I mean, it's hard. There are lots of people who need to be more self-aware, but also that's the freaking easy part. I mean, how many times have we said, oh, I'm going to work out every day starting tomorrow. Oh, I'm going to like start being a better daughter. I'm going to start being a better, wife or whatever. Like, how many times do you lie in bed at night thinking like, oh, I really should do X, Y, and Z? But it's not like you deciding to do that suddenly makes it true. It would be a lot easier for us to be like better, better self-actualized people if we could do that. And I feel like in order to show how challenging it is, for our heroes who do manage to be better people, you also have to show people who fail. And I try to do that in all of my books to some degree because I think it's important.
I brought this up with another fantasy writer once about when you're writing people who are trying to be better, like there's always going to be that failure built into it. And that failure usually takes the form of hypocrisy, whether it's
Mhm.
intentional or not, because you're trying to be better than you feel like you currently are. And I think that sometimes, we don't enjoy our own hypocrisy. So I think that sometimes when you're reading a character and really closely identifying with them, there's that horror movie feeling of like, no, don't open that door. So
Oh my God, I know. It drives me nuts. Like, and I understand it because as a reader, or even like, a movie watcher, TV watcher, whatever, it is frustrating to watch characters that feel like they don't make logical sense. So I know that that's like a very common reader criticism, like not necessarily, like just in general, like of books in general. And sometimes I'm like, have you met a human? Like we don't, like, first of all, people are idiots. And second of all, like nobody makes sense. When people try to point out like logical fallacies in characters, I'm like, well, yeah, like have you existed in the world? Like people don't make sense. Like some of like the kindest, like nicest people will like turn around and like do the most, or advocate for the most heinous, stuff. Like people don't make sense.
And I think that therapists would not have a job if we did make sense. So that's kind of. So I'd love to ask a broad question about how magic kind of functions in the world. And I don't really mean so much in terms of like pragmatic world building and like the actual powers involved, but sort of like how it functions within characters' emotional journeys, if that makes sense for you.
Yes,
Mm.
because that's how I like to use magic, especially with this series. When I was going back through it, because I don't read my books because it kind of stresses me out. Like it makes me feel like how actors must feel when they like watch their movies back and they're just like critiquing everything and then it's done. So it's like you can't do anything about it. So generally, I cannot read my books back because it stresses me out. But these had been a few years. And of course, they went through another round of like copy edits and there were no major changes, but I did read them through. And there were definitely things that I read and I was like, if I was writing this again today, I would probably handle it differently. I'm not going to change it because it's a finished piece that exists in that point in time. But yeah, this trilogy in particular, I was struck when I read it again, like exactly how much magic kind of almost functions as like a character tool rather than like it gets a very soft magic system, in this book.
Yeah, and I actually enjoy that because it feels arcane, right? And it is like I don't think magic should ever also feel like it makes sense in the same way, because it's an iceberg. There's like the bit that we can see as it manifests in the world, and then there's all of the sort of unknown stuff under it. And I like when it feels like ancient and mysterious, and I feel like that is part of world building in its own way. So now specifically to ask about this third volume, and again, I'm going to keep them broad so that we don't reveal anything for readers who are looking forward to reading this. The end of the second volume found the characters separated. There are lots and lots and lots of machinations that have to go back into getting them into the same place again, whether that is geographically or, thematically or in their character arc journeys. How do you keep all those plates spinning? And how does the alternating POVs relate to that? I know that's a pretty big question, but
it is a big question, and I'm going to make myself sound so unprofessional. Dude, I don't know. I don't know. I am in the phase, towards the beginning phase right now of writing the final Crowns of Nyaxia book. And I hate the beginning of a new project. Like, I write extremely fast once I get going, once I have momentum. Like the second half of a book, the last book I wrote 80,000 words in 2 weeks and it like wasn't even hard. But I definitely cannot do that at the beginning. Like it'll take me months of just like spinning my wheels to just feel like, gee, what's going to happen in this book? Like, how is this going to make sense? Like trying to get things together and like have enough for me like to hook onto. So I am kind of in that phase right now. And when I'm in that phase, I really feel like I texted another author friend of mine and was just, yes, last night and was like, I've never had an idea before. I'm never going to have an idea again. Like it's just empty in here. There's nothing here. So right now, I don't know. I still am so proud of Mother of Death and Dawn. I've written so many books and I love them all. And they are all like my favorite child in a different specific way. But I think it might be the best book I've ever written. Like I'm very proud of it. And at this particular moment in my writing journey, I look at it sometimes and I'm like, I hope I can do that again.
I mean, it's very impressive. And, to go back to the question about like whether you have the end fully plotted out when you start or whether you find it on the way, it feels like almost like trying to land a plane when you can't see the ground, and that's an impressive thing.
And then even when you can, like for this series, the one I'm working on now, the Crowns of Nyaxia series, is an 8-book series, which by the way, if there are any authors here listening, like don't do that. It's not worth it. Trilogies maximum from now on. I am a duology only girl. 8 freaking books. I don't know what I was thinking. And I do know what the end, I actually knew I had a much stronger sense with the Nyaxia series of where things were going because of my experience with the War of Lost Hearts series, I was like, oh, I want to have a stronger idea of what's happening. Like, I know I am never going to be an author who has the entire thing plotted out, like beat by beat for all 8 books. Like, that's not who I am as a creator. And I have great respect for those authors who can do that, but it's not how my brain works. But I do want to know, like, generally where things are going. And even when you see the ground, there's just so many ways to get there, and like there's so many factors. And like when you're comparing something that you're just starting to your finished work, you're saying like, wow, past me was able to get like all of these layers and all of these different, like the plates you're talking about. There's like Mother of Death and Dawn, there's a lot going on in that book. And that's what I'm proud of with it. And I'm like, it just is overwhelming to think about all those things at once at the beginning when you have no scaffolding really, or you have only pieces of scaffolding. But what I forget is that I definitely did this at the beginning of Mother of Death and Dawn also. I had all of the same feelings every time.
Yeah, to use another strange metaphor, it's like what they say about sculpture, how like you are
Mhm.
chipping away the rock and finding the shape. It feels like, writing the ending is like, or writing any book is the process of like eliminating possibilities, right? Because at first you are opening up
Yes.
possibilities and then you are eliminating them in the closure and making things definite where there was once mystery and unknownness. Yeah.
Yeah. Yep.
So I'm very, very excited to recommend this to our romance and fantasy fans here at the library. I usually end with a question about what is on your horizon, but it sounds like Nyaxia is on your horizon currently.
Yes. And it's like my immediate, like I'm right there. It's not even like over there. It's right here. Um, and as I mentioned, I'm pregnant. So I have like a very hard deadline in the sense that I'm pushing out a human baby. And I I need I need to finish the book baby before that.
Good luck and early congratulations for both of those both of those
Oh,
journeys
thank
for
you.
you.
Thank you.
And thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedule to talk to me and our listeners. It's been really lovely.
Thank you. I had so much fun. Thank you for having me.
You're so welcome. All right, listeners, please check out Mother of Death and Dawn. Check out obviously the first two volumes first if you haven't, Daughter of No Worlds and Children of Fallen Gods. By the time that you hear this, they'll all be out in the world at that point. So head to your favorite website or bookstore or library, wherever you like to go for your books. All right, thank you for joining us, everyone. It's time to close this chapter. We'll see you next time.
It's time to close this chapter of Turn the Page. Join us for the next episode.